So I got this thing I want to go through because one of the things that happened over the NFL draft weekend was we saw number 1, number 2, number 3 being Joe Burrow, right? Chase Young, Jeff Okudah. And as many of you know, at one point, all those dudes were on the same team at Ohio State, right? Now, because quarterback is quarterback, guys go into the portal. He came out of LSU, had a decent season in 2018, and had one of the greatest seasons of all time in 2019. And then Chase Young even managed to make himself a better football player than a guy like Joe Burrow, who passes 5,000 yards, 60 touchdowns. And Jeff Okudah was cited, at least by the NFL, as being the best available cornerback in a league where cornerback is a need. But I was taking a look around at college football, and I had the thought of we could see this sort of thing again, particularly as it pertains to the likes of Clemson or Alabama, but there's a couple other squads that I want to get to. So I kind of wanted to roll through those, right? Now, what I find most interesting about Clemson is how Trevor Lawrence has been basically the de facto number 1 quarterback selected in the 2021 draft since he's a true freshman. But since Justin Fields was able to play the kind of football that he was able to play last year, we have folks that are saying, hey, perhaps that guy could be the number 1 pick at quarterback and number 1 overall, right? Even as Penei Sewell might be the best football player in college football next year, right? So looking at those two guys, then you go to Trevor Lawrence has Travis Etienne behind him. And all Travis Etienne has done is rush for 1,600 yards in back-to-back seasons, averaged 7.8 yards per carry last year, 8.1 yards per carry the year before, and 7.2 yards per carry in 2017. Okay? My man is good for about 7.4 per clip. That's real good. And he probably would have been one of the top running backs taken in this year's draft, but next year it's going to be another loaded draft for running backs because we know we got Chuba Hubbard back there as well. To say nothing of what Trey Sermon might be for Ohio State, which is how I get to number 2, where you could see that again, because Sermon, it seems, is going to have an opportunity that he's always wanted, which is to be the featured tailback, right? Because Master T blew out in his Achilles last month. You don't know what you're getting with Marcus Crowley, who's coming back from injury, and then you have a true freshman coming in over the summer. So you have to kind of rely on that guy, and we know how much they like to run the football at Ohio State, so much so Justin Fields only threw for about 3,200 yards because they were so good at running the football, and they had a 2,000-yard back there in J.K. Dobbins, but they still had enough carries for Master Teague to end up all Big Ten third team, right? So that's there. And then going back to Clemson, looking at the wide receiver position, Justin Ross, by some, has been cited as a better wideout than T. Higgins. And T. Higgins, all 6'4 of him, tied that record for TDs held by DeAndre Hopkins and Sammy Watkins Jr., right? We know that he's good. We know that he's elite. But Ross has tremendous hands. And since his coming out party in 2018, you've seen it, right? He had 300 yards plus receiving on 12 catches in the college football playoff in 2018. Sunning on Notre Dame and Julian Love, who was a Paycom Jim Thorpe Award finalist, right? And then going straight at Alabama's neck, handing Alabama the worst loss of the Saban era in the game for it all. Ross figures to be the first wide receiver taken off the board if Jamar Chase does not come back with the same sort of season that he had last year, which he could do, but it's real hard to see that happening because that was a phenomenal year that he had. So Clemson is already looking at perhaps having 3 guys on the offense taken in the first round. But then if Xavier Thomas is able to come on, they could end up with a 4th. Xavier Thomas being a former 5-star defensive end who's had more than 11 tackles for loss over the course of his career. And while we were all so, and rightfully so, just enamored with Clemson's defensive line in 2018, he still managed to get run as a true freshman on that defense, which was, again, phenomenal. 3 dudes on that starting defensive line were taken in the first round of the NFL draft the following year, right? Dexter Lawrence, Christian Wilkins, Cleveland Farrell. The Raiders have basically made Clemson one of the pools for which they want to pull talent from. That and Alabama, they love those places. Then they go to Ohio State. They're going to the new blue bloods. I'm including new because Clemson is Clemson, and Clemson being new money and still destroying everybody is not something that we were all really expecting. But then if you go to Alabama, you could see Jalen Waddle, who might have been the most talented wide receiver on a group of talented wide receivers last year that included Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Smith, and of course, Henry Ruggs. But Devontae Smith also coming back could be another guy that ends up going, because as much as I love Derek Stingley Jr., Devontae Smith ate him up in that game, right? And basically brought them back into striking distance with a slant route that was elite over what I thought was the best true freshman cornerback I'd ever seen, and a guy that perhaps could win this award next year or even the year following, because I don't think he's going to be there for a fourth year because Derek Stingley Jr. is that good. Then behind him, Najee Harris in the backfield, 1,200 yards rushing on just 209 carries. Then add another 300 yards receiving in there on about 27 catches, right? Which is about as many as you would expect a tight end in an offense that throws the ball around to get. But that's 3 on the offense before we get to Mac Jones, who could enjoy a Jordan Love kind of rise, right? Because the thing about Jordan Love that's still baffling is the dude threw 16 interceptions last year. Last year. Trevor Lawrence hasn't thrown 16 interceptions in his career. Julian Love threw 16 last year. So if Mac Jones turns out to be the guy that beats out Bryce Young for the job, keeps Talia Tagovailoa on the bench, and then turns in a pretty decent season, there's no reason to believe that we have NFL personnel that would say, hey, we take him, because they took Greg McElroy, among other things. But as a first-round selection, I think if he throws for 4,500 yards and 40 touchdowns, it'd be hard to say he's not one of the better quarterbacks in college football based on the kind of talent that he faced. And then on the other side of the ball for them, Patrick Surtain Jr. coming back. Patrick Surtain is real good. And he's also going to be joined by Dylan Moses on that side of the ball, right? 2 guys that have first-round talent. We'll see if they play to it. So that's just 3. Clemson, Ohio State. I guess I could throw Chris Olave in there as the wide receiver, but I could also go and throw Jonathan Cooper in there on the defensive side of the ball, or Shaun Wade, who's getting mocked in the first round. This could not be the last time that we see 3 guys go from a team that was constituted a few years ago together, right? That's the part of this that I find the most fascinating and the most fun, because at the top of college football, with this thing called recruiting, we have a really great understanding of what it all could look like given a few years. Now, there's certainly going to be some misses in there, or there are going to be some guys that transfer and have to take the other year, right? Which kind of leads me into Florida and Texas. The reason I'm putting Florida and Texas in the same category is because Tariq Black announced that he is transferring to the University of Texas, all 6'3", 215 pounds of him, after 3 years at Michigan. So you get to leave with your degree from the University of Michigan, and you could possibly play 2 years to pick up your master's from the University of Texas. From a diploma standpoint, an academic standpoint, it's hard to do better than that, man, especially if you get to play football. Now, depending on how next year goes for him, he might come out with Sam Ehlinger, Keontae Ingram, Caden Stearns, all guys that perhaps with an excellent year could be first-round selections. Ehlinger has to work hard at it because he's basically Jalen Hurts, right? Tim Tebow light. He needs to get better and more accurate as a passer, but he's also not going to have the benefit of saying that he carried the team, because as much as we like, to talk noise about Texas, they're very skilled at the skilled positions. And I like Ehlinger, right? He was on the show last year, and I enjoyed him. He took everything that I threw at him and fed it right back. The kid wants to win, and he's competitive, right? And that's what you're drafting. That's what you're drafting. But then if you're looking at Jake Smith in the slot, goodness me, you're looking at Brendan Eagles at wideout, also real good, right? And then over at Florida, Kyle Trask coming into his own. Gets Justin Shorter, who we'll see about whether or not he gets to be eligible, but was a 5-star wide receiver and top wide receiver in his class coming out, transferring away from Penn State, right? And then you look at what they might have at linebacker and what they might have at safety following up C.J. Henderson getting drafted in the first round. It's not hard to see. And in April, going into May, these are the kind of conversations that make me giddy. These are the kind of conversations that I really love about the upcoming season in college football, because nobody's hopes and dreams have been dashed. Not yet. Unless you're a Kansas fan. You're not winning the Big 12 if you're a Kansas fan. You might never win the Big 12 if you're a Kansas fan. Matter of fact, basketball. You want to stick to basketball if you're a Kansas fan. But looking at North Carolina, there's no reason to believe that they can't be there at the end. Not right now. Sam Howell returns. He's real good. They have Jay Bateman coordinating the defense. Phil Longo coordinating the offense. Mac Brown recruiting his butt off here of late. Notre Dame expects to be there. Ian Book needs to have his magic here. We're going to get to find out if Ian Book is Justin Herbert or if Ian Book is Jake Fromm, right? Just a dude that wins because of the people around him, or a dude that is actually capable of playing at the next level in a way that would suit the next level. Because the thing about Ian Book that I find most fascinating is he's best on the run. Like, he's best when the pocket breaks down. And I think it's that melanin in his skin, or lack thereof, that has people thinking pocket presence. But that's a dual threat quarterback over there that Brian Kelly chose to go with. That's more accurate than Brandon Wimbush. Now, he loses Chris Fink in the slot. He loses Chase Claypool outside. But he's got some tools over there. And if they get their running back situation sorted out, Notre Dame ought to be all right. But I can't see them having 3-4 first-round picks. Not this year. Go to Oregon. It's possible. It's not likely. 2022 feels like the year for Oregon because Kayvon Thibodeau probably projects as a number 1 overall pick, right? Even so, Penei Sewell, one of the better athletes, if not the best football player playing next year in college. Oregon wants to be right there. I think they got 2 games to where they can lock up a spot in the college football playoff just by putting it on cruise control after that. You go and you beat North Dakota State, you're going to get people's respect. Because North Dakota State ought to be an FBS team. They play like an FBS team. And there are teams that run away from them, but then they get Ohio State the following week. I don't know who put together their schedule, but they're fearless. Rob Mullins, what are you doing? Putting Mario Cristobal into this blender. But if you come out of there with 2 wins, we're all going to look at the guys that you have back there, and we're going to look at the guys on the defensive side, and we're going to say, which one of these guys is eligible? Because they just beat 2 of the better teams in college football across any division. And that's what you would be saying if you're a Duck fan, right? Meanwhile, down at USC, right? Keaton Slovis coming back from a phenomenal true freshman year. You get Brew McCoy healthy. You just had Michael Pittman Jr. get drafted, and in any other year, he wins the Biletnikoff Award. You bring in a new defense coordinator where you expect to have a lot of fun, blitz a lot, and put your safeties and corners in man principles, and have a lot of fun going after Washington State and Nick Rolovich in his first year. Going after Kevin Sumlin, who apparently has just been catching all these L's, and really testing yourself against Arizona State. A Herm Edwards run program that is run as much like an NFL club as any college football team in America. And we're going to see not a total balance of power shift, because I don't see that on the horizon, but we are going to see what it looks like for other schools to produce quality pros, and we're going to see what it looks like when all of those pros, or most of those pros, or some to most of those pros are on the same team, right? Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, we all expect them to be there. What's going to be interesting is anybody chooses to challenge those 3 teams in a meaningful way in 2020.